Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about jargon. So without further ado, let's hop right in. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host and executive coach, Adam Melnick. With over a decade of experience in mental health, leadership, and coaching, I aim to help you understand leadership through a mental health lens. So let's sit back, relax, and have a chat. I hate jargon. I hate what jargon has become, particularly in the corporate world. Mostly because the average person has no idea what jargon is or how to use it effectively. In fact, I would argue that most leadership has no idea how to use jargon appropriately, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating when I work with an organization and they actually have to have a spreadsheet on all the jargon that they have for their organization. They used to present to new employees a Word document with over 200 different acronyms and verbiage that they used to communicate. And all of it was jargon. This may come as a surprise, but if your organization has to create a Word document with all the specialized verbiage and acronyms for the average employee to read and memorize to help them understand what's going on within your organization, you screwed up. You screwed up badly. If you would like to get into leadership, if you would like to climb the corporate ladder, if you would like to become someone people aspire to be like, you have to cut the jargon, because it is harming you more than it's helping you. To start us off, let's actually talk about what jargon is and how you're supposed to use it. Jargon is specialized words or phrases that a group of people use or a profession uses that is difficult for others to understand. The main purpose of jargon is to expedite communication. It's to create efficiencies within our words so we can convey thoughts, feelings, or orders to an individual rapidly. That's the only purpose jargon has. Again, let me repeat this. Jargon's whole purpose is to create efficiencies within communication so we could rapidly expedite what we want to convey to another person. This is why we should be using jargon and why it is used. In the medical field, I typically use a lot of jargon when I speak with another healthcare professional. When there's an emergency situation, I will often hear a doctor ask me, "What's on board?" Or a paramedic might ask me this question. This is medical jargon. What is on board? In layman's terms, this phrase means what drug did you give and what dosages. Another example of medical jargon is bagging. If you are unconscious and I need to do CPR on you, I will ask a colleague, "Please bag the patient." This is medical jargon, and what it means to the layperson is please grab a bagger, attach oxygen to it, turn the oxygen to 10 liters, provide 2 breaths to the patient every 60 chest compressions, and do it with a C-clamp to make sure the mask doesn't fall off. As opposed to telling them all this, I am just saying, please bag the patient. It's instances like this where jargon is incredibly important because it allows me to convey thoughts, opinions, or orders in a timely manner to save someone's life. This is how we use jargon. Every profession you get into or encounter will have their own jargon that's unique to that profession. In fact, you will work with teams of individuals that will have unique jargon within that team. And if you used it outside of that team, nobody would know what you're talking about. There's been many times where I've used jargon that I learned at another location, another place of work, that my colleagues at a different place simply didn't understand. And that's because that jargon was unique to the clinic that I worked at. And this is just medical jargon. Truth be told, I've listened to a lot of corporate heads talk, and I've listened to their jargon, and their jargon talks a little bit more about KPIs, SWOT, ROIs, dividends, common share. While this jargon can be helpful within a corporate setting, and very specifically in specific corporate groups, it is uniquely unhelpful when talking to other professions. To kind of help you understand, if you used corporate jargon in the medical world, if you use that jargon with me as a nurse while I'm working, I would honestly think you're an idiot and roll my eyes internally. I wouldn't say this to you. I would roll my eyes internally, thank you for your time, and then move on with my day. But the same would be true if I used my medical jargon in your corporate world. That's the thing to remember. Jargon is specific to the group and the setting. And the reason why we use it is because it increases the efficiency in communication, and it can also help us signal that we are part of that in-group to give us a little bit more credibility. If you came into my world and you started using a little bit of my medical jargon, I would honestly have a little bit more respect for you as an individual because you know a little bit about my world. And so I'm more likely to listen to you. It gives credibility to you as an individual. Those are really the only two positives of jargon. As you climb the leadership ladder and you get higher, you need to reduce the jargon that you use to near zero. And to help you understand why, let's listen to a clip about the Rockwell Retro Encabulator.
Here at Rockwell Automation's world headquarters, research has been proceeding to develop a line of automation products that establishes new standards for quality, technological leadership, and operating excellence. With customer success as our primary focus, work has been proceeding on the crudely conceived idea of an instrument that would not only provide inverse reactive current for use in unilateral phase detractors, but would also be capable of automatically synchronizing cardinal gram meters. Such an instrument, comprised of Dodge gears and bearings, Reliant electric motors, Allen Bradley controls, and all monitored by Rockwell software, is Rockwell Automation's Retro Encabulator. Now basically, the only new principle involved is that instead of power being generated by the relative motion of conductors and fluxes, it's produced by the modial interaction of magnetoreluctance and capacitive diractance.
If you have no idea what this man is talking about, you're not alone. In fact, nobody knows what he's talking about. And that's because Rockwell Automation doesn't exist. The Retro Encabulator doesn't exist. It's not a real product. This is a spoof on corporate jargon. What this individual is talking about is meaningless drivel. It's all corporate jargon. No matter how many times you listen to his speech, you will get the same result. You will get nothing because there is nothing there. It is just jargon. Let's talk about why jargon gets a bad rap. And it's because individuals use it inappropriately. See, jargon, first and foremost, can be a gatekeeper. It can be used to intentionally exclude unwanted parties or people. Because again, I'm using jargon that's very specific to my group, and if I have others joining my group, they will not be a part of the in circle. They simply lack the knowledge and expertise to be able to navigate the communications that is happening between the group members. This can create the unfortunate side effect of having an elitist group within your organization that is using this jargon. And if you wish to be a part of this elitist group, you must learn the jargon and pass the gatekeeper in order to be heard as an individual. This gatekeeping can cause discrimination, bullying. It can keep good ideas down and help perpetuate a status quo that ultimately will stifle your creativity and keep your organization from moving forward. Another way that jargon is typically used is to intentionally confuse or baffle individuals. Think of Rockwell Automation's retro encabulator. Imagine sitting in a board meeting and having him talk to you about their retro encabulator. You would be confused and baffled by what you have just heard, and honestly, he'd probably be banking on the fact that you are too prideful to stand up and ask what the hell you just talked about. Hell, I've seen medical professionals use medical jargon as a way to baffle or confuse management and make them scratch their head and go, I don't know what the hell you just talked about, but I mean, you keep doing you, as opposed to management stepping up to the plate and saying, no, what exactly are you doing? Explain it in actual English. I've also been in boardroom meetings where I've watched consultants use jargon intentionally to make them sound more important than they actually are, to convince management to fork over their money to these consulting firms. When the reality is these consulting firms don't know jack shit. And unfortunately, because when we look at leadership, many people have egos and pride and they don't want to look like an idiot. They don't ask questions when they watch individuals use jargon as an attempt to manipulate them, to intentionally baffle or confuse them. And this is how you get taken advantage of. Jargon is also used as a way to keep power. Because again, it's a gatekeeping phenomenon. By using jargon or terminology that the average person doesn't understand, it keeps the power with specific individuals, creating again this elitist group. If you would like to have free thought of ideas, you need to eliminate the jargon so more individuals can participate in your conversations than just the elite group. But when it's also used in excess, it can create almost a delusional pattern of thinking, which can enforce this grandiose or pompous view individuals have of themselves and their organization, which can be rather unhealthy because it skews and warps the reality of what's actually going on within an organization. Here's a little bit of jargon that I've made up for an imaginary business, and I would like you to think about, what do they actually sell? What do they do? Our team of multidisciplinary professionals instill the family values of teamwork and equality in each product, creating a unique synergistic harmony of cultures to ensure customer satisfaction with each bite. This organization sells pizza. That's all they do. They just sell pizza. And yet, based off this jargon, you would think that they are moving heaven and earth, that they are changing the fabric of society and creating a utopia for the future. Leadership that wholeheartedly believes in this jargon, that believes that they are creating this utopia, I'm going to level with you. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. By attempting to submit your will on society through a delusional lens and a lack of perspective, you will cause incredible amounts of suffering, not only for yourself, but for your team members and society at large. And this is a podcast episode we're going to get into in depth about, which is don't believe your own bullshit. Because it's important to remember, you are going to have to say jargon or use jargon, but you cannot believe it. Because again, it can create this delusional thought pattern. And the minute you start believing this BS, you're screwed. you're absolutely screwed. And that's a one-way ticket to the end of your career. Lastly, jargon is used as a way to deflect blame or purposely obscure issues, or also potentially to mask incompetence. I've seen professionals, and I've also seen leadership, when things are going wrong and there's these issues at the job site, intentionally tell their higher-ups, the shareholders, the boards, whatever the authority is, a bunch of jargon to distract those individuals from understanding what's actually going on at the job site, distract them from understanding the actual problems that are going on, because there's usually some fear of maybe losing their job, maybe getting reprimanded, and distract their authority figures, whoever that might be, typically it's higher leadership, away from what's actually going on. Unfortunately, sweeping these problems under the rug doesn't work long term. It is a short-term strategy that will always backfire on you. So let's get into how we should use jargon. So first and foremost, the thing to always remember is as you climb a leadership ladder, you must reduce the jargon that you use to virtually zero. The reason for this is because as you climb the leadership ladder, you will be speaking to a larger audience that is comprised of multiple different teams and professionals. Remember, jargon is specific to professionals and teams. I've been in meetings where leadership has used so much jargon that I don't even know what the hell they're talking about, and yet they're really enthusiastic about what they're saying. By using this jargon, you are intentionally excluding certain professions from the conversation. You are creating more confusion. You are not expediting communication. You are just creating more problems. You need to use as little jargon as possible because we want to include these professions. We want to include as many people as possible into these conversations. Do not be surprised if you use nothing but jargon and nobody speaks up because they don't know what the hell you're talking about. The next thing is, if you are going to use jargon, you need to be sure that everybody in that room understands what that jargon means. How we do this is either we have conversations beforehand and we learn the jargon that they know, or when we are having a speech or doing a presentation, we provide them maybe with a glossary. Or, for example, if we're talking about KPIs, typically we'll talk about key performance indicators, what they are, and then we'll put in brackets KPIs, and we'll have that on a slide so everybody can read it, so everyone's in the loop now, and then we can just refer to that jargon from that point on. We give them a list or a little legend that they can use to understand what it is that we are actually talking about. We may also want to use it if we're trying to create a sense of authority or credibility within certain professions to show them that we do know what they're talking about. We do know their lingo. We do know their language. For example, I use a lot of medical terminology, but if I'm going to work with someone from the corporate world, I will let them use corporate jargon, and I may even use corporate jargon myself as a way to show, hey, I know what you're talking about. We live in the same world. It can help build that camaraderie or rapport within your teams or professions between you and them. But be careful. When you use jargon, limit to how often you use it and how much you use. Using too much jargon can either come across as condescending, because it now sounds like you're trying to make fun of the individual, or it can make you look like simply an idiot in front of that profession, and they will roll their eyes at you and they'll walk away. An example of this is I remember talking to a leader in the healthcare professional who was using all the medical jargon about their team. We work with a team of multidisciplinary healthcare professionals that come from a holistic lens, from a bias-free approach, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I listened to their spiel and I thought, wow, you're an idiot. They won't tell you this, but this is what they are thinking internally. It will destroy your credibility and damage your reputation. To wrap up this episode, jargon is specialized words or phrases used by a group of people or professions that are difficult for others to understand. Its main purpose is not to explain something, but to create efficiencies within communication to rapidly convey thoughts, feelings, ideas, or orders in a timely manner. Every profession has jargon. The positives of this jargon is it increases efficiencies in communication, and it can also signal that you're part of the group and give you some credibility. The negatives of jargon, however, can be that it is a gatekeeper, intentionally excluding unwanted parties or guests. This can have the unintended side effect of stifling creation within your team and ensuring that your organization stays stagnant. It can allow for delusional thinking, which could cause major problems for your organization down the road. It can be intentionally used to baffle or confuse individuals, or hide or obscure problems. Us in leadership should always be striving for reducing the amount of jargon that we use in our communication. Be aware that as you climb the leadership ladder, you will have a larger audience comprised of many different professions, groups, and teams that are all going to use different jargon. By speaking in plain English, it'll allow them to participate in the conversation and ensure flow of ideas. If you do have to use jargon, make sure that all the professionals there understand the jargon, or provide them with a legend or an explanation of which each term means before you just use it. That way everyone's on the same page. And if you do use it, don't overdo it. Make sure you're using jargon in a way to build rapport and to convey your credibility within the field, but not to the point that you just sound like a robot or a machine rattling off buzzwords. It will destroy your reputation. All in all, the rule of thumb when it comes to jargon is limit it to only the absolute necessary, or get rid of it completely. I hope you found this conversation helpful. In the next episode, I'm going to teach you guys how to manipulate people. So, I shall see you then. Cheers. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, give it a like, and share it with a friend. And if you're ready to take the next leap and improve your leadership skills, head over to www.seedingthelead.com and book your free coaching session today.